Asian markets rise as investors weigh Trump's tariffs on the region. President Donald Trump slaps 25% tariffs on steel and aluminium, but will it hurt or help industries? And we explore Turkey and Pakistan's economic relations following President Erdogan's visit. Hello, I'm Tayyip with the latest business and finance news here on TLT World. Asian markets mostly rose on Wednesday as investors assessed US President Donald Trump's tariff impact on regional economies. Meanwhile, oil prices extended losses as higher than expected US inflation was overshadowed by hopes for an end to the war in Ukraine. US consumer prices increased by the most in nearly 1.5 years in January, with Americans facing higher costs for a range of goods and services, reinforcing the Federal Reserve's message that it was in no rush to resume cutting interest rates amid growing uncertainty over the economy. Hong Kong's Hang Seng led gains, rising 2.4% in its final hour of trade, while mainland China's CSI 300 added 0.95%. Now, once again, Donald Trump has imposed a 25% tariff on steel and aluminium imports to the US. But how will this affect the industries it's meant to protect? Let's take a closer look.
25% taxes will be slapped on all aluminium and steel imports, no matter where they're coming from. From defense to shipbuilding, energy to automotive, no industry is immune. President Trump first imposed tariffs on steel and aluminium in 2018, claiming they would help American industries. But the effect wasn't as expected. Steel prices rose from March to September that year, and Ford and General Motors slashed profit forecasts, blaming tariffs. Since these metals are essential in a wide range of products, the increased costs made U.S. industries less competitive. The ripple effect of the tariffs spread across many everyday products. Think nails, tractor parts, wires, and cables all became more expensive. Then, in 2020, new tariffs were imposed on derivative goods, products made from steel and aluminium. Those taxes hurt the very industries they were meant to protect. Canada will take the hardest hit from the new 2025 tariffs, being the US's largest supplier of steel and aluminium. Last year, over 50% of aluminium imported into the US came from Canada. This isn't just a Canadian problem. Brazil, Mexico, and many more will feel the pressure, while some were hoping for exemptions. Countries like Australia, Canada, and Mexico had previously negotiated carve-outs, temporary exemptions from the tariffs. But today, the message is clear: no exemptions, no exceptions. For U.S. consumers, this means no escape route, no alternative markets to turn to. The situation could backfire as countries vow retaliation. Canadian steelmakers are urging their government to retaliate, and the European Union has warned that unjustified tariffs won't go unanswered.
Meanwhile, the Trump administration has announced that by Thursday, reciprocal tariffs will be imposed on every country that charges duties on US imports. The remarks come as EU trade ministers vow to prioritize negotiations to avoid a trade war. But the White House press secretary says too many countries have been taking advantage of the US.
This is something he believes strongly in, and it's very simple logic as to why the president wants to impose reciprocal tariffs. It's the golden rule, which we all learned when we were growing up in school. Treat others the way you want to be treated, and far too many nations around this world have been ripping off the United States of America for far too long, and that's why the president believes this will be a great policy that will benefit American workers and improve our national security.
For more on this, we're joined by Srikant Kondapalli, who's a professor of Chinese studies at the Jawaharlal Nehru University in New Delhi. Now, Professor, these tariffs are supposedly put in place to protect key US industries, but could they essentially end up hurting them?
We do not know. If you go by history, for example, in 1981 to 1994, the United States imposed tariffs on Japanese automobile sector. And then finally, Japan turned around and started investing in the US manufacturing sector. So this is a lesson you have shown just now about the decline in the US, steel products import costs increasing, especially on the US consumers. You mentioned about the General Motors and others, but there is also possibly the issue can affect the US electronics, clothing, consumer goods, and probably there will be also some disruption in supply chains and retaliatory tariffs by many countries, as China has already begun last week. And so there is a problem here. But when we go through the history, the Japanese invested in the US manufacturing sector. I think the game plan of President Trump is that he wants investments by the countries which are dependent on US trade. US lost about $1.2 trillion last year in terms of the imports from all countries, but predominantly from Canada, Mexico, and China. China has a surplus of $295 billion last year, which means that the Chinese retaliatory tariffs would not really work on the American products because the US exports just about $150 billion to China, while China exports nearly $450 billion to the United States. So there is actually an asymmetry here in terms of the import-export. And I think that is going to affect the US market and the Chinese market. So we probably will see this pattern adjusting over a period of time, because you mentioned 2018, President Trump imposed tariffs on China. However, the Chinese have said that they will invest $250 billion in the US market, but they have not kept their word, and hence the current tariffs. But please also remember that President Biden also invoked tariffs on solar panels, EVs, electric vehicle sector, and other items imported from China. Yes, it is putting some pressure on the other supply chains across the globe, and we need to see the global trade patterns when these are adjusted to the reality.
Right, and we also know that Narendra Modi is in Washington to meet with President Trump. Can we expect a deal between the US and India out of this meeting?
In terms of the, you mentioned about the reciprocal tariffs, right? So India is one which has more tariffs on all products, something like 14.5%. Generally for all countries, including for the United States. China actually has 6.4% tariffs on the American products. So India actually has more tariffs on the all countries, including on the United States. So I think this is a major sticking point between US and India, and possibly we will see some readjustments on the Indian part. On the other hand, I think most of the agreements between US and India during Prime Minister Modi's visit from today would be in terms of the science and technology investments in India and also in the energy sector. India has bought something like $20 billion worth of LNG from the United States. It still has a surplus of nearly $45 billion with the United States. So India would be careful because of the overall Trump's policy on imposing tariffs.
Right, Professor Shrikant Kondapalli from the Jawaharlal Nehru University in New Delhi. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, the head of US President Donald Trump's Department of Government Efficiency, Elon Musk, spoke at Dubai's World Government Summit. There, he emphasized the need to remove many bureaucratic agencies as part of the government's efforts to improve management.
We do need to delete entire agencies as opposed to leave part of them behind. Because if you leave part of them behind, it's easy. It's kind of like if leaving a weed, if you don't remove the roots of the weed, then it's easy for the weed to grow back. But if you remove the roots of the weed, it doesn't stop weeds from ever growing back, but it makes it harder. So we have to really delete entire agencies, many of them.
Meanwhile, US lawmakers have accused Elon Musk of breaking the law in his attempt to cut government spending. Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, known as DOGE, has been shutting down departments and firing federal workers since Donald Trump was sworn in. Mahnaz Janmohammadova has more.
Elon Musk, known for his leadership at Tesla and SpaceX, stood alongside President Donald Trump in the Oval Office as the president signed an executive order to work with the DOGE. The order directs U.S. agencies to work closely with Musk, now a top White House advisor, to reduce the size of the federal workforce.
There are some worthy things, but overall, if you say what was the bang for the buck, I would say it was not very good. And there was far too much of what USAID was doing was influencing elections in ways that I think were dubious and do not stand the light of day.
President Trump and Musk criticized the foreign aid agency USAID, calling it incompetent and corrupt.
We got elected to among other things, find all of this fraud, abuse, all of this horrible stuff going on. And we've already found billions of dollars, not like a little bit, billions.
DOGE has been tasked with cutting federal bureaucracy. Critics argue that this move is unconstitutional.
Directly to Mr. Elon Musk.
The subcommittee's top Democrat representative, Melanie Stansbury, made a direct plea to Musk to testify under oath before the lawmakers.
We are well aware that you are eager to engage with members of Congress on social media, but we're not here to play. If you have serious desire to engage in democracy and transparency, we welcome you to the Oversight Committee. Come and testify in front of the American people under oath.
Musk and his team, however, defend the initiative, emphasizing its goal of eliminating redundant positions and increasing government transparency. They insist that reform is necessary to fix what they describe as an inefficient system. As the first hearing on DOGE unfolded, critics claimed the initiative is driven more by political ideology than genuine fiscal responsibility. Despite mixed reactions, DOGE has been granted expanded authority. Several proposed budget cuts are now facing legal challenges, delaying their implementation. The future of impact of DOGE on the federal workforce and government operations remains a subject of intense debate. Mahnaz Janmohammadova, TRT World, Washington.
Environmentalists are furious following the controversial executive order from US President Donald Trump lifting the ban on using plastic straws. Activists accuse the president of contributing to the climate crisis, something Trump doesn't believe in. Kubra Akoch has more.
President Trump broke the news from the Oval Office.
We're going back to plastic straws. These things don't work. I've had them many times, and on occasion they break. They explode. If something's hot, they don't last very long, like a matter of minutes, sometimes a matter of seconds. It's a ridiculous situation.
Not a shocking announcement from a world leader who denies the climate crisis, calling it one of the greatest scams in history. The UN says plastic waste harms biodiversity and contributes to the climate crisis by increasing the level of carbon emissions due to the disposal of plastic components that are derived from oil and gas. The UN says by 2050 there could be more plastic than fish in the ocean.
I don't think that plastic's going to affect a shark very much as they're munching their way through the ocean.
Trump withdrew from Paris Climate Agreement for the second time as soon as he took office.
Disappointed with Trump's move because, in reality, the government should lead these issues, especially the United States, as one of the world's most powerful countries. Its actions have a real impact on the world. Reversing the plastic straw ban or bringing them back into use truly affects the planet.
According to the UN, plastics generate 1.8 billion tons of greenhouse gas. That's almost 3.4% of total global emissions. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development projects it's going to triple by 2060 if nothing is done to decrease plastic waste.
It's not just plastic straws versus paper straws. It's not just these two options. It's about a single-use culture versus a reuse culture. When we talk about plastic straws or any single-use items, we need to push for more reuse, raising awareness about single-use consumption, regardless of the material, should be the focus.
Many countries party to the Paris Climate Agreement pledged net zero emissions by the 2050s. With activists saying developed nations should do more to share the burden rather than unbanning plastic straws because they work better. Kübra Akkoç, TRT World.
Now a quick look at some of the other top business stories from around the world. Japan's wholesale inflation hit a 7-month high of 4.2% in January, rising for the 5th month in a row. The ongoing increase in prices has led to expectations that the Bank of Japan may raise interest rates later this year. The inflation jump comes as the BOJ governor warned that high food prices could continue. The second largest US oil and gas company, Chevron, has announced that it will cut 15 to 20% of its global workforce by the end of 2025 in a bid to reduce costs, simplify operations and complete a major acquisition. It comes as the company deals with production issues, including cost overruns and delays in a large project in Kazakhstan. The layoffs could impact around 8,000 workers. Chinese search engine leader Baidu is making its AI chatbot ErnieBot free for all users starting April 1st. The company says better technology and lower costs have made it possible. It will also launch a free advanced search tool with smarter AI responses. But Baidu faces tough competition from DeepSeek and ByteDance, which also offer free AI services. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan is in Pakistan, the final stop of his Asia tour. His arrival in Islamabad aims to enhance cooperation and explore new opportunities in defence, trade and diplomacy. Claire Herriot has more.
Economic cooperation is high on the agenda in the meetings in Islamabad between Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif. Pakistan has already invested heavily in Turkish military hardware, buying Bayraktar drones as well as some warships. What we expect to hear in the conclusion of the bilateral talks in Islamabad on Thursday is the signing of more memorandums of understanding as well as more military ties and more economic ties between the two countries. President Erdogan and Prime Minister Sharif, they will co-chair the Strategic Partnership Forum. This is a high-level forum which aims to give direction to some of the economic plans and bilateral links between the two countries. And there's also a business forum taking place. So it's a very busy day in Islamabad. And of course, this trip to Pakistan follows two previous trips by the Turkish president to Indonesia and Malaysia. And in each of these three Muslim majority countries, what the aim has been is to foster bilateral ties at this time of heightened geopolitical tension.
For more, we're joined by Şuay Nilhan Açıkalın, an associate professor at Ankara Hacı Bayram Veli University. Now, we know Pakistan and Turkey have strong bilateral ties, which they want to boost further. How are the two countries aiming to expand their strategic economic framework?
Thank you very much. Actually, the two countries shared a brothership for a long years, and right now they try to crown with the more deeper economic and especially the defense cooperation. As we remember, the Pakistan and Turkey signed an agreement in 2018 regarding the Milgem warship, and it was the biggest and the largest defense export of Turkey. And since then, Pakistan and Turkey continue to increasing the projects both in the warship technologies and right now including the drones and some common cooperation and co-cooperation, and including the co-production of the tanks. That would be the topic of this visit by President Erdogan.
Right, and also several agreements are expected to be signed between the two countries. What do we know about the nature of those deals so far?
Within this visits, there will be an agreement. Actually, it's including from the health towards the education, and it will basically aim to make more cooperation in more faster way, because through the years we saw that kind of the cooperation and agreement seems to be on the mostly in very specific sectors. But if you look over these last agreements, mostly more holistic and especially very specific sectors, looking forward to a more positive cooperation between two countries, both in the mutual and bilateral relations.
Right, and you also mentioned that one of the key topics of cooperation is defense. What more can you tell us about the significance of Turkey's Milgem project for Pakistan?
It was basically aim to strengthen the Pakistani army, and it is not the simple production because it's created a long-term cooperation between Turkey and Pakistan. It's the Milgem Corvettes project, giving a long-term partnership between the two countries. And also it's important that establishing the production facilities not within the Milgem projects, but in general sense of the defense sector cooperation became a different when it comes to compared to the other countries. One more important thing just before this visit, few months ago, the fair of ideas, the military defense fair in Pakistan, basically dominated by the Turkish companies from the defense sector and focusing on the co-production in the different fields of the defense sector.
Okay, Şuay Nilhan Açıkalın, we will have to leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Meanwhile, Turkey and Turkmenistan have signed a landmark agreement to bring Turkmen natural gas to Turkey. The Turkish Minister of Energy and Natural Resources, Alparslan Bayraktar, explained the details to our correspondent Priyanka Navani in Jakarta.
We are going to start getting gas from Turkmenistan starting from March 1st until the end of this year. But this is not only one-year deal that we are planning to extend this gas deal and gas flow from Turkmenistan to Turkey through a swap agreement with Iran. We are going to get our gas from Turkmenistan through Iranian pipeline, and so there's a swap agreement as well. But hopefully in the future there will be a Trans-Caspian pipeline, which will bring more abundant gas resources from Turkmenistan to Turkey and through Turkey, hopefully to Europe, which is desperately need additional gas volume for its gas security. So that's the main objective of this agreement.
The World Health Organization has warned that programs tackling HIV, polio, mpox and bird flu have been affected by the freeze on overseas aid from the US. The Trump administration's freeze on foreign assistance, including billions of dollars to US aid, has opened the way for China to step up and provide assistance. Emre Boz has the story.
Delivering vital goods and resources to those in need was something the United States was happy to do. USAID was one of America's top branches of soft power, but US President Donald Trump feels the humanitarian agency is a waste of money. He's halted all humanitarian assistance for at least the next 90 days.
Virtually every investment made is a con job. There's nothing of value to anybody unless there's a kickback scheme going on, which is possible. And we're going to be doing more and more of that. We're going to be looking at tremendous amounts of money, Peter, being spent on things that bear no relationship to anything and have no value. We're talking about trillions of dollars.
But as the US withdraws funding, another actor is preparing to fill the void: China. China has been steadily increasing its foreign aid expenditure, upping its spending from just over $500 million a year to a steady $3 billion by 2015. The Pacific is the world's most aid-dependent region, with the US one of the key contributors of assistance. The United States has spent about $3 billion in the region over the past decade. 80% went to countries like the Marshall Islands, Micronesia, and Palau. With funding cut, there's an opening for somebody else to fill the gap, and analysts are pointing to China. In Latin America, countries like Colombia received around $385 million last year, the most USAID aid in Latin America. Fears of even more aid cuts may mean they'll look elsewhere. Aid as a soft power can benefit the donor. It can boost trade ties, with aid being conditional on the recipient country buying goods and services from the donor. Secondly, it strengthens strategic influence of the donor country, accessing key resources and areas of cooperation with the recipient country. So the US has all of this to lose, and it could be China's gain, meaning access to new and more diverse markets. Emre Boz, TRT World.
Well, that's all your business news for now. Thanks for watching.